What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Grizzly Tales.
Grizzly.
I am your co-host, Patrick Cloud.
And I'm Persephone. We got some little flowers here.
And you know that since most murders are based off of passion, there's probably a lot of murders on or around Valentine's Day.
Absolutely. And it kind of speaks to the origin of Valentine's Day, which is what I will be discussing
The
today.
massacre.
No.
Oh.
The martyrs. I'm going to talk about the Valentine's Day martyrs.
Saint Valentine?
You're talking about the massacre with like the gang members, the ones that got killed. No. I'm talking about the origin of Valentine's Day, which is pretty dark.
Hey, 50 Cent also had a massacre around Valentine's Day.
Wow. You just can't help yourself.
It's the second album. Underrated album. I'm a big 50 fan. All right. Well, we obviously both brought some pretty grisly Valentine's Day related murders.
Yes.
Do you want to go over the title of yours, ladies first, since it's Valentine's Day?
The gory origins of Valentine's Day.
Okay. We might as well start there. And then we will go on to this is the headline. Young couple in love tied to a tree, tortured and killed.
Jeez.
And it is 3 paragraphs long. It's very short.
Oh, wow. Straight to the point, huh?
I mean, honestly, I think you got the story from the headline.
Yikes.
But that we on the podcast we talked about our worst Valentine's Day.
That's
pretty bad.
Yeah. I'm lucky to have had the worst Valentine's Day that I
Pretty
had.
bad. All right, let's start. We might as well start with the origins.
Okay. The holiday began as a feast to celebrate the decapitation of a 3rd century Christian martyr.
Whoa.
Or perhaps 2. So how did it become all about love?
So starting off, Valentine's Day was never about love. It was about celebrating a public murder. Let's do this.
On February 14th, sweethearts of all ages will exchange cards, flowers, candy, and more lavish gifts in the name of Saint Valentine. But as a historian of Christianity, I can tell you that at the root of our modern holiday is a beautiful fiction. Saint Valentine was no lover or patron of love.
Oh.
Valentine's Day, in fact, originated as a liturgical feast to celebrate the decapitation of a 3rd century Christian martyr, or perhaps 2. So how did we get from beheading to betrothing on Valentine's Day? Betrothing is like to get married.
Oh, okay.
Ancient sources reveal that there were several Saint Valentines who died on February 14th.
It's a common name back then?
I guess so. 2 of them were executed during the reign of the Roman Emperor Claudius Gothicus in 269-270 AD, at a time when persecution of Christians was common. How do we know this? Because an order of Belgian monks spent 3 centuries collecting evidence for the lives of saints from manuscript archives around the known world.
Yeah.
They were called Bollandists, after Jean Bollin, a Jesuit scholar who began publishing the massive 68-folio volumes of Acta Sanctorum, or Lives of the Saints, beginning in 1643.
It's a book.
Since then, successive generations of monks continued the work until the last volume was published in 1940.
It was dropping volumes like mixtapes.
Yep.
Fire.
The brothers dug up every scrap of information about every saint on a liturgical calendar and printed the texts arranged according to the saint's feast day. The volume encompassing February 14th contains the stories of a handful of Valentini, including the earliest 3 of whom died in the 3rd century.
So these are just unrelated people named Valentini.
Who died on Valentine's Day.
Or were killed.
Yes.
Damn.
The earliest Valentinus is said to have died in Africa along with 24 soldiers.
He was African?
African.
Oh, he was in Africa. You could. It's fully possible for you.
He died in Africa.
You could die in Africa and not be African.
Along with 24 soldiers. Unfortunately, even the Bollandists could not find any more information about him, as the monks knew sometimes that all the saints left behind was a name and a day of death. We know only a little more about the other two Valentines. According to a late medieval legend reprinted in the Acta, which was accompanied by Bolandes' critique about its historical value, a Roman priest named Valentinus was arrested during the reign of Emperor Gothicus and put into the custody of an aristocrat named Asterius. As the story goes, Asterius made the mistake of letting the preacher talk. Father Valentinus went on about Christ leading the pagans out of the shadow of darkness and into the light of truth and salvation. Asterius made a bargain with Valentinus. If the Christian could cure Asterius' foster daughter of blindness, he would convert.
Damn.
Valentinus put his hands over the girl's eyes and chanted, "Lord Jesus, enlighten your handmaid because you are God and true light." Easy as that, the child could see.
Dang. The dad was probably like,
right.
I'm going to get rid of this dude. Hey,
Right.
cure my daughter blindness and I got you. And
Right.
he was
So
like,
he thought it was a for sure, like,
right. He said, Jesus Christ, give her eyes. He was like, no way.
give her sight. Let there
Now
be
I got to
sight.
do this stuff?
Right. Easy as that, the child could see. According to the medieval legend, Asterius and his whole family were baptized. Unfortunately, when Emperor Gothicus heard the news, he ordered them all to be executed.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
For what?
Because maybe there was a type of power that he was jealous of.
So he's
the emperor, so he should be all powerful. And there's somebody coming along like, oh, I can cure blindness. Get rid of him. Because now people are
hire him.
Right. I get it. But jealousy was pretty big back then. Unfortunately, when the Emperor Gothicus heard the news, he ordered them all to be executed. But Valentinus was the only one to be beheaded.
How were they killing the other people?
I don't know. I don't know yet. A widow, though, made off with his body and had it buried at the site of his martyrdom in the Via Flaminia, the ancient highway stretching from Rome to present-day Rimini. Later, a chapel was built over the saint's remains.
Damn.
Saint Valentine was not a romantic.
Let me find out he had hella hoes.
Why is that where you go?
He said he's not a romantic. Maybe Valentine was like, man, F these bees.
You know what? I'm going on with the story. The third century Valentinus was a bishop of Terni in the province of Umbria, Italy. Still other stories romantically involve him with the blind girl whom he allegedly healed.
Shut up.
So he was smashing the blind girl?
He was like,
smashed her back to sight?
I want you to see
you need to
what
see.
I got.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You feel
Let
it.
there be sight.
Wow.
Sorry. Okay.
I don't agree with any of this.
Yes, you do. You go darker than that.
I do like the idea of him passing notes in jail, though.
Right.
Inmate 3 thinks you're cute. Check yes,
Yikes.
no, or maybe.
Oh, my God. No, I like you and I want you. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. Yet none of these medieval tales had any basis in 3rd century history, as the Bolandes pointed out. In any case, historical veracity did not count for much with medieval Christians. What they cared about were stories of miracles and martyrdoms and the physical remains or relics of the saints.
Hang on. So that basically means that, and obviously we know that a lot of religious stories are embellished or fabricated, depending on your level of belief.
Yeah.
But I never thought of Christians or any religions only responding to the crazy stuff like a newspaper or like a blog. So it's like
all of this stuff is going on, but we only really care about the miracles and,
right
and the good stuff.
So
basically.
it's almost like early marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, if he walks across water, let me not use Jesus as an example.
You were going there.
If he
But if
defeats
he doesn't,
a giant,
it won't be anything.
right? But if he defeats a giant, or heals a leper or a blind person, we'll listen.
Only the interesting stories make the cut, basically.
So you got like stressed out Bible writers that are just like, we need a hot story.
Right. Right. Exactly. Because these ain't cutting it.
Like they getting miracles. Like, what else you got?
Yep. So some story writer came
I cured
along
sickle
and said,
cell. Yeah. Did you cure anything that was physical?
Right. You can't see that.
We can't see that. We can't prove it.
Right. To be sure, many different churches and monasteries around medieval Europe claimed to have bits of St. Valentine's skull in their treasures. Santa Maria in Rome, for example, still displays a whole skull. According to the Bolognese, other churches across Europe also claim to own silvers and bits of one or the other of St. Valentina's body.
Well, back then there was no DNA testing, so you could have got a rabbit's foot bone and been like, this was Jesus's toe bone.
For believers, relics of the martyrs signify the saints continuing their invisible presence among communities of Christians. In 11th century Brittany, for example, one bishop used what was purported to be St. Valentine's head to halt fires, prevent epidemics, and cure all sorts of illnesses, including demonic possession.
Okay. His legend got out of hand.
He goes crazy.
Compared to who he actually was and what he was doing.
And where he is now.
How did his head start doing exorcisms? His head is fighting demons now.
Yeah,
he was like, bro, I lived a regular life.
He's all about love at this point.
Y'all selling all types of teddy bears and Rite Aid because of me? I was doing regular ass shit.
As far as we know, though, the saint's bones did nothing special for lovers. Unlikely pagan origins, many scholars have deconstructed Valentine in his day in books, articles, and blog postings. Some suggest that the modern holiday is a Christian cover-up of the more ancient Roman celebration of Lupercalia in mid-February. Lupercalia originated as a ritual in a rural masculine cult involving the sacrifice of goats and dogs and evolved later into an urban carnival.
Urban meaning a black person's carnival?
No, I just think just more worldly.
Okay.
During the festivities, half-naked young men ran through the streets of Rome, streaking people with thongs cut from the skins of newly killed goats. Pregnant women thought it brought them healthy babies. In 496 AD, however, Pope Gelasius supposedly denounced the rowdy festival.
A lot of our major holidays just come from wild Roman events.
Yes, crazy shit.
Wow.
Still, there's no evidence that the Pope purposely replaced Lupercalia with a more sedate culture of the martyred St. Valentine or any other Christian celebration.
Wow. Were we wrong about this guy?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of starts off as 3 different martyrs who were decapitated, and then it goes because they were performing miracles.
It wasn't even love related.
Yeah, it wasn't love related.
Then he got the rumor of smashing the blind girl.
Yeah, so it turns into this rowdy ass festival. And then,
then his head is exorcising demons.
His pieces of his skull are, supposedly in different areas and performing miracles, but they're basically saying none of that is true, and that pretty much Valentine's Day is whatever. That's what I'm taking from. Yeah,
even the date. That's the craziest part about a lot of these holidays. It's like we thought that when we learned the real truth behind Christmas. We thought at least it still happened in December, and they were just like, there were sheep outside. It was probably not winter. Yeah. It's probably sometime middle of the... It's like, what are we doing? And now we found out that not only was he not about love, the middle of February was completely random.
That's why I have such a big problem with interpretations when they say, oh, this is a new book based on this type of interpretation. What I know is that if you sit 5 people in a room and the first person tells the story to the next person and they have to then translate it.
Oh, by the 5th person, it's Cat in the Hat.
Right. It goes from, the Flintstones to the Cat in the Hat at the end.
And that's if they're trying. That's if they're trying to remember.
Right.
But imagine if they're like, I want to cover this up a little. Like, that's way too much, responsibility.
So then
if you wrote the Bible, you would add some stuff.
So then we're, if we were...
A history book?
Yeah, I probably wouldn't add anything.
To a history book?
I would try to keep it as legitimate as possible.
One of your coworkers would add some stuff.
I don't disagree with that, though.
I don't believe a single human.
You think I would add some stuff into the Bible?
I think my mother would add something.
I wouldn't add anything because I want the truth to be told, but I don't think there are many out there like me. I feel like, this would be a little bit more interesting if he was 6'8".
But that's the problem.
Instead
It would get
of
corrupted.
4'2".
It would get corrupted along the way, because even if you and everybody who was writing it were on point, at some point it's going to be changed.
So when you have to deal with someone else's interpretation, you don't know where their mind has been. You don't know what kind of dreams they have. You don't know their level of education, which back then
not very
is
high.
Questionable. So then you're relying on them to interpret and then translate. So now when you translate, you're translating into your own words what you think is being told from this literature. I can't base my whole belief system off of someone's interpretation who I have no idea who they are. And it's gone through 17 different interpretations and translations. Now it's like,
I mean, think about how many of our holidays melted before our eyes. Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
I remember the day we learned what really happened. I said, what? Up until now, I was taught a lovely dinner happened.
Oh, 4th of July.
Then Christmas, 4th of July.
So we got Juneteenth.
We had to switch. That was the only one you'd think we would have switched off of Thanksgiving. But when we heard about July 4th, we switched. We said, we weren't free. Juneteenth. What else? Valentine's?
I mean, just go back
St.
into
Valentine?
children's stories, too. Like
it's
going
all,
to
yeah.
Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, all that. All of these stories, it's just another rendition of our childhood when we found out Santa Claus wasn't real.
Yeah, it's crazy. That's a good point, because the legend of Santa Claus is just as fabricated as the legend of Thanksgiving. You know what I'm saying? Now we're finding out that Valentine not only wasn't about love at all, that's not even the reason why he died. And that's not the reason why it's in February.
Right.
I do think that if we were going to keep some random bone of St. Valentine's and use it to
Crush up and put in your soup.
No, use it to basically manipulate people into a holiday. Why didn't they say it was a boner? Missed opportunity. If you were gonna have some random bone and create a holiday, I would be like, this is St. Valentine's boner. He was the saint of love and connection.
Wow.
Boner? Why are we exorcising demons with St. Valentine's skull?
Because the demon is the non-love, like you trying to get the
You can't exercise with a boner?
No.
Wave it around like a wand. Leviosa. Demoness audicis.
Harry Potter? Really?
All right. I'm gonna get into
When you hit me with your... All right.
I'm gonna get into this next story. So
Leviosa
that story was
boner.
low-key easy to make fun of because it was so long ago.
Yes.
This one not so much.
Okay.
So it's gonna get a little grisly.
Get prepared.
Grizzly Tale number 2.
Maybe you should have went
starts
first.
now. Right. Young couple in love tied to a tree, tortured and killed. Students Jesse McBain, 19, and Patricia Mann, 20, were a young couple out for a walk on Valentine's Day back in 1971. It was to be the final walk either of them would ever take. 13 days after they entered the wooded area in Durham, Orange County, North Carolina, didn't know North Carolina had an Orange County too.
Oh. Things you
13 days after they entered that wooded area, their lifeless bodies were found.
Oh, so they were found on like
2 weeks later.
The 22nd.
2 weeks later. Fully clothed, but covered crudely by leaves, the couple were tied up and had both been strangled to death. Evidence pointed to their killer or killers repeatedly tightening and loosening the ropes around their necks as a form of torture and a way of prolonging the killings.
That's sick.
I've never heard no shit like that.
That's sick.
Tightening and loosening the rope around their necks.
You give them the hope that you're not going to kill them, so they get, excited, like, okay, you're going to let us go. And
it's almost like you were trying to get info out of them.
That's crazy.
Like waterboarding, how they put you underwater or pour the water and then let you breathe for a second. But that's usually to get information. Like, you had enough? Yeah. Give me the info. Right. Those are the worst people to be.
This does sound like a torture technique.
Oh, if you're being tortured for no information just for the person's pleasure, worst case scenario.
It's horrible.
Here's the worst part. No one was ever caught for the heinous crime.
You know what?
The repeat tree choker is still out there.
You know what's crazy? He probably dead by now. But
1971?
Mm-hmm. If
he could be 50 years old.
He could be
fully familyed up.
I feel like if he was living that type of life where he was out there killing people, he's probably dead.
He was
in the 70s.
He was living the type of life to get away with it.
I think a lot of
he's smart enough
in the 70s. I don't know why the 70s was just so crazy for people just getting.
Well, we didn't have no DNA, we didn't have no forensics like that. DNA. Like, you could literally kill somebody, jack off, come on the scene of the crime and never be found.
Never be caught.
They would just be written as a note, like semen was found.
The 70s, I feel like it's the worst time for people dealing with murderers and serial killers. It was just like people were just out there.
I think everything before the 70s, because the 70s was when it was recorded as being a rough time. But imagine when, remember, I think that there was like, Jack the Ripper was like the first time they ever considered one person killing a bunch of people. Like, oh my God. Like, there was a time where there was no even thought of a serial killer. It was every murder was like, who did this? Oh, another murder. Who did this? And at some point they were like, oh shit, one person might have done all of these things. So I feel like before they even came, that was very recent. So before that, I feel like people were just getting killed left and right, and it was just like so-and-so was found dead today.
I feel like once serial killers were introduced, I feel like it may have taken
increased it?
Yeah,
from
sure,
copycats. But I don't think that
and then they were
one serial killer happened and dropped, and then everybody started doing it.
Because they were highlighted in the news. It was sensationalized. They were given these crazy, dope-ass names and monikers.
That's just marketing from us finding out about it.
Right, but that makes people want to do that more that are already sick in the head.
What about the people
who didn't have the idea to do it before?
But what about the people who are just sick and like those serial killers that's just like, by this age, I just needed to kill something. That couldn't have been happened. That couldn't have happened from the news.
America has a very dark history.
Right.
So I won't say that, the 70s was necessarily the worst time, but I'm talking about as far as getting highlighted with like the amount of murders that were happening in such a short span of time. Right. I think that's when it started getting highlighted so we could actually see like, oh shit, outside of our dark history in America, which is the darkest. Well, I think coming into the 70s is where we started to really see like, oh, whoa, this type of stuff. And there was a serial killer that targeted couples on like Lover's Lane and like, so it was like.
Well, I don't know how much of that is inspired as opposed to like, I don't know what's wrong with me, but I have to do this, you know? Like, I feel like of all the people who are killed by serial killers, there are a lot of copycats, but I still think that is a section of how many there are. And I think that if it's a mental thing, there might have been serial killers since the beginning of time.
So there's probably thousands of serial killers that got away with.
It's a comfort thing in our mind that everyone who kills somebody is in jail.
If you go back into ancient times, this was killed for having an affair.
If you was walking around with a sword, you probably killed a couple people a day.
Right, right. So it wasn't even that big of a deal back then. Right. But then once we started developing somewhat of a conscience,
that's
and
true.
That death is
serial
permanent.
Killers only came with laws.
Yeah,
because before that, there were just niggas that were killing multiple people in battle.
Well, right, but they still do that. But
it just wasn't illegal.
even back then, you weren't supposed to kill anybody, but it seemed like the punishment was the death for some of the mildest things, you know,
having
like
sex
stealing.
outside of marriage.
Even though they say stealing, like a hand for a hand, eye for an eye, you know, but some people, if you stole the right thing, the consequence is death. You know, so it's like it was like death was the consequence for everything. Even like witches and stuff being burned, and you can't even prove that they're witches. Like, you know,
That was
Salem
probably
witch
the
trials,
yeah.
the people were burned for
like, yo,
the
that woman
assumption that
she just solved a math problem.
boom,
Drown her.
Right, exactly. Burn her alive, burn her at the stake. So it's just crazy that death has been looked at as just so like whatever, that I think it finally, with the laws, the current, or you know, the laws that started being developed within I'll say the 20th century, death is now like, oh, it's so bad. But in the past, like, you know, so many people lost their lives to just BS. That is like crazy.
So obviously, at the end of these things, we try to do on a better note, which is some good news. So we don't want to just end on random murder. A retired couple decided to live on a cruise ship after realizing that traveling full-time was cheaper than a mortgage.
Very nice. Very nice.
I think that if more people lived like this, there'd be more happiness. There's a lot of pressure to get old and be one place, stable, all this stuff. They were just like, honestly, if seeing the world costs less than owning a house and blah, 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 man, we about to be out of here anyway.
I love it when retired couples or people just find their niche of life with each other.
It's like cruise control, because that's what they say. The biggest scam in America is working until you're 65 and then retiring, when the average life expectancy is 70 to 90 years old. So,
but for
to
some
wait
people,
until
it's less than that.
65, to wait until 65 and you're not accounting for accidents and all that kind of stuff is way too late to start seeing the world. And a lot of people finally get to that situation, and they're not even in a lifestyle to even do that. So it's cool to see that some people, like you said, found it, and they're just like, yeah, we're a little older, but we in Greece. What's up?
Yeah, and it's like you don't have to worry about HOAs and maintenance, because living on a cruise ship, everything's taken care of for you. So if you paying cheaper and you don't have to do like physical labor, you getting service, no physical labor
and
like that.
The boat loves you. Like, they're gonna give you some extra stuff.
They're your friends. Like you live on a cruise ship,
a constant customer on something that's supposed to be filled up every time,
and luxury.
Man. So, Richard and Angeline Burke now live together on cruise ships after realizing it's less expensive to travel full-time than to pay a mortgage in Seattle. According to Angeline, who recently retired from her job as an accountant, the couple spends less than $100 per day for food, shelter, entertainment, and, of course, travel. When they're temporarily living on land between cruises, they stay in Airbnbs or hotels. So $100, 30 days, $3,000?
That's $3,000.
$3,000, which is a good if you are renting or have a mortgage.
But I'm paying double to that.
So
I could be on a fire ass
cruise ship. You add that price point, and you adding in food, entertainment, and seeing the world, and then on top of that, you're not an accountant anymore.
Is that $100 per person?
They said the couple spends less than $100 per day.
Oh, wow.
So let me reiterate.
Yeah.
2 people, $100 a day. Food, entertainment. Remember, mortgage and paying rent.
But you get to travel the
that's still
world.
That's still one price for 2 people. But food, $100 per day for 2 people. All meals. Entertainment and travel. You're being fed, entertained, and seeing the world And y'all gotta just split 100?
Serviced.
Split 100.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That is, I feel like there would be way more
I'm getting
happy
an
old
idea.
people. Well, I feel like after 50, I'm not gonna care. Especially if I don't have kids. Oh, I'm blowing the legacy money. But in their situation, they could have a full family and they can afford to do whatever they want.
For sure.
I think that's going to become a trend.
It's lit.
I love it.
I'm here for it.
All right. Well, I think that was a big mood switch.
Absolutely.
Love these things.
Enjoy love.
That's the only
And
that's
if
the
you
only
don't
advice
have
we
it,
gave
enjoy
out.
yourself.
I'm
Self-love.
talking about beating it.
Yeah, self-love.
I'm talking about the self DJ.
Physical.
Air it.
Oh, so you're talking to the ladies. So I'm talking about the self-bottle cleaner.
Well, I said beat it first. Yeah. And then DJ.
So I'm talking to the fellas. Get that bottle cleaner action out. You know what I'm saying?
Never heard that, but it's interesting.
You know how you don't know how you clean a bottle?
I've never cleaned a bottle.
Oh, wow.
I've been your co-host, Patrick Cloud.
And I'm Persephone.